everyone, I'm Sinead, Head of Communications at Rising Ballers and She's a Baller, the UK's fastest growing football media brands and creative agencies working with global clients. And today I'm joined by the very aptly named Scot, Head of Brand at Lyle Scott. Let's get into it. So Scot, please could you give the audience a top-line overview on your role at Lyle Scott and also what charged you to join such a rich heritage brand?
Yeah, thanks, Sinead. I've had a bit of an unusual journey into brand marketing, I suppose. I started as a merchandiser, so I did that for 7 or 8 years. I managed a website during COVID, and then I came out of that and wanted kind of a new challenge and something that was a bit more suited to my interests and my life outside of work. So it's been an odd journey to get here. I've never studied marketing. We were kind of talking about this yesterday. I've never read a marketing textbook. I'm here kind of purely on culture and vibes, I suppose, for want of a better phrasing. So that's kind of my journey into Lyle Scott, and then now I work on partnerships, collaborations, work closely with Rising Ballers and footballer fits over the last 12 months. And that's kind of my passion outside of work. So football, fashion, that intersection between the two, music. I didn't go to Glastonbury, unfortunately. I think I would feel a little bit more anxious if I had, sitting here today. But my job is really that kind of connecting people and bringing Lyle Scott into the mainstream culture and into subcultures. I guess that, I've worked for the brand for 7.5 years now, so what really drew me to the brand in the first place was, I was part of the youth culture of Lyle Scott in the noughties when you had the Arctic Monkeys, the Libertines, the best bands or the best British bands were all wearing Lyle Scott, and they were people I was looking up to, people that were living lives that I thought was aspirational or interesting. So that kind of made Lyle Scott a big part of my childhood and a big part of, I guess who I am today in youth culture. So that's what kind of drew me to the brand. I feel like I am part of the heritage, having gone through one of the great movements and generation of Lyle Scott. And that's, made me rounded and good at the job that I have today. Or I'd like to think so.
Absolutely. And Lyle Scott was established in 1874, so we're talking the Victorian era, top hats, telegrams, actually when light bulbs were first in family homes. Fast forward to now, and you've gone from royal warrants and golf attire to remixing fashion with football culture. People might not expect a heritage fashion brand to sit down with a youth collective like Rising Ballers. Why is that collaboration so important right now for Lyle Scott?
I think, we celebrated our 150th anniversary last year. It's a very unique milestone that not many brands get to live to or experience or really get to enjoy and use as a cultural moment for a proper jump-off. And I think Rising Ballers offers us something that we don't naturally tie into regularly, where they're really driving, football culture and youth culture within that. It gave us a nice way to tap in and use a bit of our heritage, but in a modern way that's not always looking back. It's using who we are and what we've been and, making it relevant for kids today, because not everybody wants to talk about the 1870s, which I understand it's not everybody's hot topic of interest, but, brands do evolve over time and they do change. And I think, keeping your finger on the pulse is one of those things that enables you to live for 150 years or more.
And that involvement piece is really important, isn't it? Especially when you want to stay current and relevant. We've spoken before about how not being boring is essentially in the brand's DNA. It's essentially a brand value of Lyle Scott. What does that look like for a brand that's 150 years old in practice?
We talk about remarkable a lot in the office, or extraordinary. Doing things that are worth remarking on is the simple explanation of the word remarkable. And that's kind of a challenge to the employees to really push things on and do things differently, and not just not look at the past, not look at what other brands are doing all the time, but really think about what's different and what the USPs of Lyle Scott are. We are 150 years old. We've got a lot of different points of heritage. We have to kind of stay true to those, and it's not a boring journey trying to connect the dots between golf, football, music, fashion, lifestyle, international business. All of these things are really complex and kind of unique within their own right. Lyle Scott has to kind of challenge and tackle them all and deal with them at the same time. So that diversity and kind of it sounds a little bit cliche, but no 2 days being the same, because one day I'm talking to a Japanese licensee, the next day I'm talking to Eni and Sandy in the office in London. It is really, like, the versatility of it makes it remarkable in a sense, and it definitely makes it not boring.
Yeah, and I actually visited your offices when we were planning this, and you have something very interesting in the office, right?
Yeah, so the office, surreally, at times is sort of like a zoo. So we've got a giant rhino, life-size rhino that's in the entrance, and a small dog that's chasing it, or kind of trying to bite its tail. And that's to kind of foster this culture, or this underdog mentality, I guess, where we're not a multi-billion-pound business like our competitors. We have to be a bit more nimble, a bit more agile, a bit more going against the grain, and not boring by nature to stand out in what is a saturated market. There's a lot of fashion brands out there. These D2C lifestyle brands are great. They're popping up every day, but my Instagram feed is spammed with these ads of the same brands doing the same things. It is really important to stand out and be different, and proud of that. So that dog and the rhino gives us that unavoidable, the first thing you see when you walk into the office on a Monday morning is a dog chasing a rhino. It's a marketing tool in itself for internal staff to get them kind of G'd up and ready to fight for Lyle and Scott. So that's kind of one part of the zoo. You move a little bit further into the office and there's a giant purple cow. And that's to tie into Seth Godin's book about that truly remarkable spirit of, if you go past a field hundreds or thousands of times and all the cows look the same, you don't think twice of it, or you don't remark on it. But if you were to see a purple cow in one day, it's extraordinary, it's remarkable, it's something that you don't see all the time, and it really sticks with you. So that kind of culture of fostering the underdog mentality, but also looking at things that go against the grain and really make Lyle and Scott stand out and be more than just a part of culture, but kind of leading it. That mentality is unavoidable in the office due to the nature of life-size cows, life-size rhinos.
And let's talk about going against the grain. What is a bold move that Lyle and Scott have made that's maybe made you nervous at first, but actually resulted in something that you're really proud of?
So I've got a couple of examples that I'd like to talk about here. We've sort of talked a little bit about our 150th anniversary already, and how there's no appropriate or set formula for how you celebrate that. It's very much managing opinions of other people, or input of everybody trying to find what's right and what's the appropriate way to celebrate 150 years. It's not like a 21st birthday where you might have a party, you might go to the pub, you do the kind of classic things. We really considered our heritage and our status as a British lifestyle brand, and we onboarded Wavy Garms as the curators, or to tell our 150th anniversary and look at our archive and say, these are the bits that are relevant to the people who you want to be in the room. We did a pop-up in Soho, we did an advert. These things all felt quite risk and a little bit non-conventional for Lyle and Scott, in a way that we'd never really worked with a marketing agency or a culture agency of that type, but it really propelled us onto what came next and what's followed. The year before that, we introduced a global grassroots football campaign where we'd had the opportunity to work with Premier League talent. We'd had a couple of them visit the office, talking kind of hundreds of thousands of pounds marketing deals, and instead we pivoted and we invested it in football kits that we essentially gave away to teams all over the world. It was one of those things that, we spent a couple of $100,000 on it. It was the kind of thing that getting it over the line and in the boardroom was seen as a little bit crazy. You're going to spend what on giving them away for free? But it really, it propelled us into culture. It got us talking with rising ballers and footballer fits. It kind of integrated us again with the modern football fan. And, as wild as it was to propose something that cost so much money and had no immediate return on investment, we're now starting to really reap the rewards of it as a brand that's really associated with football culture and the good things that happen within football. From a personal pride perspective, the kits have gone to 20 different countries on 5 different continents. There's people all over the world playing football in Lyle Scott kits that we gave away for free. It's an incredible initiative that's really not only expanded our global reach and acquired customers for us, but has done something that I'm genuinely makes me feel emotional and proud of, because I can't really think of many other brands that have done something that kind of widespread and powerful. Just a little old brand from Scotland, formed in 1874, have touched people all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that work where it really touches you emotionally and wins your heart and mind that is the most rewarding, I think, for a lot of us. At Lyle and Scott, you work with creators and communities and organisations that are a little bit more further removed from your existing heritage. How do you make sure that those activations don't alienate other demographics that you look to target?
It's a really important point, and it's something that we do regularly discuss. How do you move a brand on, or how do you stay adaptable and keep changing and staying relevant, but not jumping on every trend and losing your sense of identity? So I always think of it as a movement with culture, not with trends. So, we know who we are, we're proud of who we are. It's got us to 150 years already. We don't need to be tearing it up, reinventing the golden eagle and, changing all of these things to move with the times. You just have to adapt and work with the surroundings that you've got. I think the difficulty comes from having that diverse customer where, we've got youth and junior and kids wear, but we've also got people in their 60s and 70s who wear Lyle & Scott to play golf. So alienation is something that we're really conscious of and we're actively not seeking to do, but there is definitely bits and pieces that are, slightly aimed at different people, and that's, the kind of level of awareness you have to have today to have a brand that can do golf, football, fashion, all of these things that Lyle & Scott is synonymous with.
Absolutely. And without alienating any audiences, we do have to speak about Gen Z. What storytelling formula have you found to be the most prosperous in terms of what you've been up to at Lyle & Scott, in terms of really targeting that younger demographic?
It's an interesting one because I think, we've got that diverse customer base, and probably the bit that we're most conscious of or most actively targeting now is that Gen Z customer, where we have a really great kids wear business. It's our fastest growing department within Lyle & Scott, and we're pretty good at kind of 30, 35 plus, but that younger demographic where it was my era of engaging with Lyle & Scott when I was 14 or 15 and picking them up and getting into the right cultures that are relevant for us. So Rise and Ballers is a great example of, we know that it's a media channel that Gen Z use. We know it's somewhere that we can, authentically belong and be a part of. Using channels like that and people to speak on our behalf is really valuable because it can be difficult with heritage to not feel a little bit old at times, and I think that's a really important factor that is something that we'll talk about in a second as well, but it's a consideration that you have to feel or age gracefully, and I think being aware of all of your customers and their diverse needs, whatever age they are and whatever point in their life or whatever part of the journey of their life they're in, we need to find a way to tap into them and speak to them. So platforms like Rise and Ballers or doing community events in London with Wavy Garms is a really good way of putting ourselves into a new climate or a new community that we belong in, but we're just kind of re-engaging in.
And I have to touch on a point you made there. You said aging gracefully. I have to ask, in the realms of not being boring, what do you think other heritage brands could be getting wrong or mistaking when they look to target these audiences?
I think the thing I'm always really conscious of is it's a great responsibility looking after something for it's 150 years old. It's beyond generational as a brand, and you have to really respect that heritage and consider, the people who've worked or come before you. There's been a lot of people who've worked at Lyle & Scott's. There's multiple generations of families that have worked there. It is a real legacy that needs protecting and honouring. And I think I sort of mentioned it earlier about culture, not trend. We're very aware of the cultures that we have an authority to speak in or be a part of. We're not just going to jump on TikTok dances or something that feels a little bit disjointed for a 150-year-old brand. We have to be really considerate of this is our output, this is who we are, and we have an in-house creative team that's brilliant at managing that brand aesthetic. I would encourage you all to go and look at our Instagram and see how great the lifestyle imagery is and how it's really selling a lifestyle now. It's not just golden eagles on t-shirts anymore. We offer a lot more than that, and everything, every detail is really considered to make sure that our legacy and our responsibility to a 150-year-old brand is protected, honoured and bettered each day.
I love that. That always striving for what's next. And with that in mind, in terms of working for such a legacy brand, thinking relatively short term, 2030, what would success in youth culture look like for Lyle & Scott then?
I think we kind of setting ourselves up for a real generational movement or moment. I've talked a little bit about the noughties and my integration with Lyle & Scott, but if you go back a bit further, you've got football casuals and the kind of movement of sportswear into the music scene in the 90s. A bit further than that, you've got golf, where we first started putting the golden eagle on our products, and even further back than that, you've got when we moved out of originally making knitted underwear in Scotland and working with global fashion houses. In 1954, we collaborated with Dior. So we've got these generational movements through time. And I think that, the tricky or the exciting part of my job is tying all four of those movements together into something that's relevant today. We've got a lot of, communication opportunities, which is great because it gives us a way of using all these great stories. But if we can tie all 4 or 5 of those ingredients together, I think we can really hit the next 5 years as this is another great generation of Lyle Scott of, global growth and real prosperity.
It's exciting. And finally, for the audience, if you could give one piece of advice for any type of brand trying to build real long-term affinity with your youth audiences, what would that be?
I think it's the idea of continuous improvement and, evolution, not revolution. Really know who you are, know who your customer is, but always strive to kind of get a little bit better or a little bit bigger as each day passes by. That kind of evolve, continuous improvement, a little bit better every day. I think that's the real mentality that's got us to 150 years and hopefully will get us to 150 more.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
Scott.